Hey, film friends. I'm Nick Furman. This is Furman on Film, a podcast where we break down movies with some of my closest friends and special guests. And this week we have a good one on tap. Nothing says holiday season like the personification of evil and the psychosexual repression of the Victorian era female. Am I right? I hope you guys are up for getting as lost in the weeds of the reinterpretation of myth as the dude who made this one. Friends, it's Robert Eggers' new Gothic horror masterwork, Nosferatu. Well, guys, today I'm bringing back a special guest. Back by popular demand, you asked for it, you're getting it. Adam Kline is the behind the screens columnist for Love is Moving magazine, exploring the power of story through faith, film, and popular culture in his native Canadian context. He and I have been film bros and just friends for life since way back in college. We do year end videos together. And since I've got him here, I have to admit that it was his top 10 lists in college that originally inspired me to begin writing my own. He's your hero and mine. Guys, it's Kleiner. All right, he's back.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I want to see those receipts about the demand. I don't believe that for a second, but
That's
I
that's
love I love talking movies with you, so I'm happy to be back.
man, it is awesome. It is we got a good one today too, man.
Oh my word!
I love having like point counterpoint with people. It's really fun if we highly disagree. This one we do not highly disagree on, but I would say that you are quite optimistic about this one. But I always like listening to people talk about movies that they love because usually they put a shine on it that makes me love them even more. So
Hmm.
there's a ton to appreciate here, but I just wanted to start with you, man, giving me your, I guess now twice the theatrical viewing of Nosferatu. What was it like? What was the atmosphere? What things stood out to you? Just some opening observations. I mean, we'll dig into plot, themes,
Okay.
pros, cons, production, all that stuff, but just your opening salvo.
I think the bottom line is that this is just an astounding work of art. This is a beautiful work of art. Um, and I still have a lot of 2024 movies to see before we make our top
Yeah.
10. But for the moment, this is the most movie. This is the most movie I have seen in
Yes.
2024. And all of that is a credit to the man and the visionary Robert Eggers. We
Yeah.
can't talk about this film without identifying him as the conduit. Because he has a very particular approach and style and cinematic eye, and he has already in with 4 feature films made a real name for himself.
Yeah.
And to me, this is the peak of it, and it's also the thing that's been with him the longest. We'll unpack that later, but yeah, it's the most movie of 2024, and
Yeah.
it's a stunning it's something that should hang in the museum. It's so stunning.
No, that's well said, man. That's well said. I'll jump ahead to themes, but here's to go along with what you said. The very best thing I can say about this movie is that I'm not sure a director and material have ever been like paired as well as these two, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Nobody does gothic horror like this guy. I mean, maybe that's a good place to start. I mean, we can do the plot, but I think maybe we should just talk about the Robert Eggers experience because I do think there is, touchstones of his art that we see kind of through lines, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So, um, I mean, what are those for you? I mean, I would say certainly this is a guy who likes to retell old sagas and legends. He likes to reinterpret myth. Um, But what I think is so striking about Nosferatu is that he was just kind of like, hey, pump the brakes, guys. It's 2024, and I'm just going to do Nosferatu. Like, he just does the movie. He does the 1922 German flick. Like, how faithful it was has almost shocked me all the more. So, I don't know. What do you
Yeah.
think? So what's the Edgar's thing for you?
So Robert Eggers is I mean, you started to hit it. Um, he is an artist consumed with historiosity, like
Yeah.
with the history of it. And he is admit like, and he's all affirmed this in interviews over the years. Like he is obsessed with history, with mythology, with religiosity, with theology, with the occult. Like he's fascinated by all of these things. And in addition to that, he is also incredibly gifted and obsessed with the construction of a frame.
Right.
And he started his career in the art department, so that makes perfect sense. He has admitted in interviews that like, that's where he's most comfortable.
Hmm.
But then I've also heard him say in interviews that his favorite thing is the research.
Yeah.
And for a couple of nerds like us, like that's something we can relate to. Like, but he just loves going deep. The difference, though, from him that sets him apart from any other living filmmaker right now is that he elevates the research. He wants the audience to see the research and know the history,
Right.
even if it's slightly alienating. Like even if his faithfulness to what something would have been in that time, whether
Yeah.
that be language or a mustache, like
Yeah.
he's willing to take the risk
Right.
and maybe slightly off put the audience because it seems so foreign and so strange. And yet, if they're willing to listen and maybe do the work themselves a little bit, they would realize that he's actually presenting the most faithful adaptation of this story from that time.
Yeah, no, that's well said. That's well said. I mean, yeah, even to the degree like to which this one is paced, I would say is reflective of that as well, right? Like it could be just it's deliberate, very deliberate. And
It feels like a silent film in
yeah,
2024.
yeah,
And that's coming from a guy who actually genuinely loves silent film and that era of the 20s,
yeah,
in a way that I actually still to this day don't quite understand why I've always been drawn to that. But at the same time, that's the origin of the medium, right? Like
yep.
film cinema is the youngest art form. It's just barely over 100 years old,
Hmm.
and it started explicitly with visuals and no audio.
That's right.
And so there is something exciting about someone who's interested in going back to that and pulling that back into obviously a renewed version of it, a 2024 version of that. But it, like you said, the pacing, the aesthetic, the framing, the styling. This is still just like the 2020, the 1922
Yeah,
Nosferatu silent film.
yeah, well said. Yeah, he's something else, man. I mean,
Yeah,
I think like it immediate like language is a big thing for him. Immediately, if you watch The Witch, which I want to say is 2014, 2015, somewhere around there, the like puritanical dialogue, the way it's rendered is like
right.
it's like it's not Shakespeare obviously, but it's like just so well composed, like that wouldst thou like to live deliciously? Like that line. Like it's so great from The Witch and the two men in the cabin or the lighthouse just in
Yeah.
that like just the back and forth dialogue and the Greek myths and all like this guy has like a facility with the vernacular like that is almost unparalleled. And that's
Yes.
back up in this it shows up in this movie too. Um in some ways less so, but in other ways more so. But like I would say yeah, that's all there. But yeah, he's like
There is a choice in Nosferatu that I didn't think about till my second viewing last night. That kind of breaks his own rule because, like you said, with the witch, the lighthouse, and the Northman,
yeah.
the dialogue and the dialect were all deeply deep. I mean, they were all English films, but with a heavy accent or heavy particularity of language and rhetoric. And I would say in this film, he actually breaks his rule. And I haven't heard anyone ask him about it. And if I'm hopefully someone out there, I wish I could interview and ask him.
Yeah, seriously.
But because the film is set in 1830, 1830s
Right.
Germany, I
Yeah.
can't remember which decade, but um, and uh, Nosferatu, the vampire, he has the accent, and some people have the accent. or I should say the gypsies and Nosferatu, they have the accent, the Transylvanian accent, and language. But for all the main characters that are taking place in Germany, they don't have German accents speaking English.
Right.
They all sound English. They all
Right.
sound Victorian, which again is a minor thing and is actually a very common thing in most Hollywood productions or American productions. That if you take it international, like just a British accent just becomes the default for
Right.
something foreign. But
Right.
in this case, with Robert Eggers being such a historical nut, I was
Right.
like, oh wait, that he's breaking his own rule. Like they should all sound German, and they don't. Um, but anyways, that's a minor detail that most audiences would not even notice or care about. But
No, it's great. That's a good point, man. Like I would surmise it's actually here's my guess on that is well, first of all, like look, it when Nosferatu was made, it's very obvious that it was completely indebted to Bram Stoker's Dracula, right? I mean, it just is. It's
mhm.
that story, but sort of transported. So much so that they actually had to ban it and they pulled it off. You couldn't find the film for like a bunch of years. The research is out there because like the Stoker estate was like, nah, F this. Like this is you can't just do this and put it
Right,
in another country. But I mean, Eggers it was is pretty outspoken about how much he loves the Stoker novel. So
right.
my guess is he was kind of like, yeah, I'll set it in Germany because that's where Nosferatu was. But like, come on, we're doing a version of Dracula here, guys.
Good point. Good
So
point.
um, yeah, I I guess to talk about how it was rendered, I mean, like I guess we would say I just feel like Eggers is always so ambitious. The Northman is like a tremendously ambitious work. I think it works less than some other people do, but it is, and this is like he talked about. I listened to interviews where he talked about like he gained the confidence to render a big project doing the Northman, and that kind of enabled to really hit the ground running with Nosferatu. But he
Right.
talked about wanting to make this movie since 2015. I mean, he staged an adaptation of this story for like the theater, like the stage when he was young, like really young, right?
Like middle school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like and he adores Stoker's novel. He grew up on horror. Like so it's all just sort of baked into this like long gestating project for him. And I
Yeah.
when we get into the possible critiques, like that will come out a little bit because it's a very airtight work. But
Yes.
I guess so. What do you like plot wise? I mean, what do we want to say? This is a story about an old creepy count in Transylvania who wants to buy an estate in Visburg, Germany, right? And it's like, why? Who knows? Well, we know from the first 5 minutes of the film, but like, why? Sure. So we'll send this envoy, the great cuck of all cucks, Nicholas Holt, to go across the sea to meet him in Transylvania. Um, Only when he meets the count, he's not like other royalty. He's got a few, what do we say, secrets of the vampiric variety up his sleeve and a certain craving to ravage and consume said envoy's young bride back in Germany, like to harken back to the beginning of the movie. So then we get boat trips, Gothic castles, plague carrying rats, and a whole lot of atmosphere. I think that's my summary of the plot. Is that like, did I miss anything? Is that like,
No, it's perfect. It's
yeah,
a very very simple story,
yeah,
and even the original 1922, like it's inspired by Bram Stoker's Dracula, but it's really it's a work of real estate. That's the joke for me.
that's right,
It's a
right,
work of real estate. The plot is so simple. Of like
right.
this old guy wants to buy land and move. The end.
Yeah,
Like that's the whole story.
right,
And it's actually comical both in 22 and here in 24. Like the details of the contracts and
right, right, right. There's a lot of paper signing in this
there's a
movie.
lot of paperwork. There's a lot of like dialogue about what's available, what's not available. It's actually quite comical, and that's also leans into what I would say is Eggers' style, where he does incredibly dense, dark material, but always with an underlining tone of humor.
Yeah, yeah,
There's always an underlining beat of humor, which the truth is, not all audiences necessarily catch or observe, because you're not expecting someone to be slightly off or slightly silly or you know in an overly melodramatic in an already melodramatic state.
I get it.
But yeah, no, super super simple story, and that's what I love about it because what I knew about myself, and you would know about this about me in film, is I really, I mean, I love, your review last week, was it on the Beast? Like,
Yeah.
I love a mind trip. I love
Yeah.
messing with chronology and thematics and implications and where it's going and how you're piecing it all together. I love that the cognitive exercise of following a work of a story and art like that. But my preferred disposition is to simply um, be provoked, be provoked by a parabolic story and myth. To have, like you said, like the artistry and the atmosphere evoke a bunch of things without naming them. I don't want things to be overly explained or overly articulated to me. I just want deep, meaningful things to be evoked and
Mm.
provoke me to engage in meaningful thought. And to me, this is honestly the one of the perfect examples of that, where you with the simplicity of the plot and the story structure,
Hmm.
you would have to completely rewrite it to make it something else and something deeper and something. But instead, throughout the film, through actions and through comments, he is provoking us with thoughts, with simple thoughts and parables of the origin of evil and what it means to be good and moral and how we face evil and confront it or flee from it, how and whether or not there's an underlying force of darkness underneath the realities of our day-to-day suffering and tribulation,
Right.
and in this case, of a plague. We have this story of an estate and a Count Orlok buying property in Germany and moving, but with him comes the Black Plague,
Right.
and it's this constant tension, and even in the dialogue of Aaron Taylor Johnson plays the friend, and he says at one point, he just says, "This is a real plague with a real epidemic, and real people are dying."
Mm.
Right, and then at the other side, you've got Willem Dafoe and Aaron Taylor Johnson's wife talking
Mm.
about God and does evil come from externally or come from within us? So it's this running parallel tandem of thoughts
Hmm.
and provocations of um, the darkness of life in the world living itself out and us confronting with that suffering, but also never neglecting the fact that where is this actually coming from?
Yeah. No, that's well said. I mean, yeah, in some ways, well, I'm latching on to like a couple of things you said there. In some ways, um, this film is like even more powerful about the nature of evil than, like your typical horror film, right? I
Right,
mean, it's just, yeah. I mean, that's thematically like that's really rich. And I was reminded the conversation I had with another guest about the film, the Italian giallo horror film.
right.
Yeah. Oh, Suspiria. When we were talking about Suspiria, it's like that reminded me of what you were just saying, that like cinema as a medium is a visual medium. And so when we actually like have guys that are like, no, 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 like you need to get in front of a screen and have like a almost like a spiritual experience of like communing with this thing versus like so many TV things we write, even just so many films where it's like they're real dialogue heavy or you know what I mean? Like the actual individual composition of shots doesn't really matter, and maybe not. Like this is like every single thing is so carefully composed. You have to just kind of like almost sit before it and get yourself swept up in it. Because I think if you don't, you're gonna find it to be like long and tedious, sort of. And
Hmm.
it's so well like manicured that you just gotta roll with it, man. So like I love what you said. I mean, it's just like there's a real cinematic language. But I think topically, like when you even wrote that in your review about something about the personification of evil. Orlok is such a crazy character, man. He's like he's just he says, "I am an appetite, nothing more," which I think is
Hmm.
like a thematically rich thing. It's about uh, obsession versus love, like
Hmm.
lust. That's a theme. I mentioned it in the top, but I do think, I mean, and this is like heavily in Stoker's Dracula, but there's a whole like women's repression of sexuality,
Hmm.
desire going on here. We'll talk about Lily Rose Depp's performance, her tour de force, I would say,
Yeah.
but those are definitely there, right? Like that this idea of like existing as an appetite just to be satisfied. Yeah,
It's just the film itself and the Egger experiment as a whole is this fine line, and I understand not everyone taps into the wavelength, but it is this fine balanced combination of engrossing atmosphere and entertainment
hmm
with deeper questions and themes. You know, and I even heard Eggers say in an interview that like this is the whole point of this is why we have the horror genre. The horror is the thing that allows us to confront evil and ask those questions in a safe environment and have a hopefully a cathartic experience of confronting and overcoming evil and identifying the things that or just creating that space for asking the questions of yes, this is what we're confronted by. Well, what's the thing underneath it? But that's all. But that's also secondary because you don't have to ask those questions. You don't have to be thinking about these things because first and foremost, he just wants you to be consumed by the story, the style,
yeah, the
and
visceral.
be entertained. And he is a terrific entertainer because yeah, the way that the perform. I mean, again, just to get into it now, like the performances.
Yeah,
I mean, it's one thing to look at any frame and want to hang it on a wall, and
right.
and I think of the high point for me is um, I can't even imagine how they did this because he also is notorious. He does use some special effects like post production effects. He does, but Robert Eggers tries to at every corner he can have as much as he can in camera actually happening.
hmm
And so there's a when when Nicholas Holt's character is approaching the castle, Orlok's castle, and he's walking down this snow-covered path, and the trees are on either side, consuming or arching over this snow-covered path, and the what's the word the horse-drawn carriage without a driver, the driverless carriage is approaching him. That
Right,
whole sequence of like probably 90 seconds, maybe two
right.
minutes. I honestly, both times seeing it, I'm like, is this hand drawn? Like it like it's like a charcoal drawing. It's
Yeah,
so elegant and beautiful and stunning, and even the way that the camera throughout the film, in many shots, the camera is fixed, but it pivots,
yeah,
and
yeah.
and and
And
and what that does psychologically to us as an audience, whether people realize it or not, right, is that we're either literally or figuratively leaning in because we're eager to see what's outside the frame
exactly, yeah.
and we want to move faster than the camera is
Right,
turning,
right.
and that creates greater suspense and puts us
Uh,
on the edge of our seats. I mean, it's just genius, and
right.
but it's also just it's nothing new, but
No,
he does it with such perfection. And so that's just the aesthetics, that's just the visuals, and then but within that frame, you have these again melodramatic, over the top, but hilarious, entertaining, and engaging performances.
right.
I mean, I'll just say that what happens right after that scene I just articulated. Hutter, right? That's Nicholas Holt's character.
That's right.
Hutter, the lawyer, the estate lawyer, his clerk. His first, I think it's like 5 or 10 minutes, but
Yes.
his
Yeah.
first encounter with Count Orlok in the
Yeah.
castle, meeting him, sitting down at the table, being fed bread and wine,
Yeah.
and laying out the contract. That whole sequence is terrifying and wildly terrifying and wildly entertaining.
Right.
And I just it's so much fun and so suspenseful.
hmm
Um, and anyways, I just and it happens again and again throughout the film. It's just
Yeah.
A terrific work of entertainment.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point you make about like it's so slow and takes such time to reveal things because that's what creates the tension and suspense because we're like, get on with it. But like in a
Right.
way that's like eager, not disappointed or bored. I mean, yeah, man, it's like that scene, it's insane because like you talked about, there's these slow pans, every shot is painterly. He uses light and shadow to like obscure Count Oracle, like old school obscure techniques, or blocking where like it's what's shot, but what's not, what's out of frame. Like to he constantly obscures Skarsgård's character, the Oracle's character, from us. So like we slowly get little details about like what his face looks like or what is on his body or and it's like minutes, like whole minutes just finding this guy, you know? And it's all through like the use of light and shadow and the slow pans and I mean that stuff is just masterful, man. And
Yeah.
it really does work to oh, I got a visitor, my puppy. Uh it really
And
does
and
work.
then but then within that you then have well we've got to call out like maybe we'll get to Lily Rose Depp in a moment,
Yes.
but I think Bill Skarsgård he won't be nominated, but he should be nominated because his performance, his voice, his embodiment of this particular version of Count Orlok and Nosferatu.
Yeah.
I mean, it's oh my word, it's just so wild. It's so out there, but it's so entertaining and I my fit in that same sequence of them or that sequence when they're signing the contracts when he finally signs the contract. My favorite line because it also kind of wraps up
Yeah.
the underlining thematics is Orlok then goes in this gut. I can't do it justice, but this
Oh,
guttural. He
good.
goes. He goes. Will we now be neighbors? Like, like I just, and that's the tone. Like that's the pace of
Yeah.
the whole film, right?
Dude, it is.
Will we
Every
now?
line. Yeah, that's how
But will we now be neighbors? I honestly, both times I laughed out loud. I was probably the only person laughing out loud in the theater. But it's such a funny line, but the delivery is so perfect, and it also wraps up this theme of being neighborly with evil, and who we form covenant and union with, right?
yeah.
And but it's also just God, just a stunning moment, and it happens again and again. But I love Bill Skarsgård's performance
It's
from
performance.
beginning to end. It's out of the world, out of this world.
Well, I love like yeah, I thought about opening it with like the opening
Yeah,
podcast with that. Hey, film friends. Like it is all like this, like very baritone, very like to the point where I was like, and then but the thing he adds to it is this wheezing, this like
yes,
insistent wheezing.
because he's basically a corpse.
Well, that's the thing. That's the power of it is like that he's basically the Walking Dead and like and he's like he might even be decomposing even more scene to
Yeah,
scene, you know? So this deep like it's so performative, right? Like
and
you
that is different than that is a
oh hell
distinction
yeah.
that
Yes.
sets this film apart from all the others.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that he really is this walking like and I joked about the mustache, right? But
Yes.
he's representing what an actual lord or
Right.
a higher class representative of that culture at that time would look like and dress like, and he's very imposing, especially with his fur coat and fur hat. But the reality is underneath it. I mean, he's literally got maggots hanging off of him, and
Right.
his skin is falling off and decomposing. And that's just a version of Nosferatu, a vampire of Dracula that we've never actually, I don't think we've ever seen on screen. And I mean, it's just so. Again, I can't think of a better word than just it's just so entertaining and engaging because I
It is.
can't look away, and I can't wait for him to do whatever he's going to do next. Now, all that said, the most intense, terrifying. Well, there are other terrifying, but let's just jump to Lily Rose Depp, um, like what her character does, and because she's really like she's basically the protagonist of the film,
He is.
right? Like
Yeah.
you unpack a bit about her performance and her character there.
Well, yeah, I would say. Well, let me just say one last thing, and before we leave the manic or the whole production design, which completely transportive, all that sort of stuff, is this film actually has jump scares, which is,
Yes,
and they're like smash cut jump scares, that are like genuinely freaky inside of
yes,
a film that is slow and plotting and all that sort of stuff. Lily Rose Depp, I think she here's the thing. She knows how to come up right against the edge of overacting in emotionality, but everything is sort of like perfectly pitched. And
right,
I would say the physicality of her role is off the charts. Like there's a part where she's, I mean, like really, like again, this is the whole like psychosexual aspect of Dracula, but she's like writhing, at different parts of the movie as she's experiencing these visions of him kind of calling to her, coming to her. Um, and and she has this part where she's like spasming herself. Like she did all of that. Like all of that is her. Like the physicality of that is her. The histrionics of it, like just so big, but not
yeah.
quite too big. Like again, like you said, it's so serious that it becomes like blackly pitched and then humorous at moments. And I'll just say, and then I'll tee you up. Is like I think it's sort of meta too, given who Lily Rose Depp had been to us, which is this like very sexualized character in some show I never watched. But like, or Johnny Depp's daughter, like, come on. So I think that part is kind of interesting too. It's like you bring this ingenue in who has only this one thing we know her as or whatever culturally, and then she just does this. And I'm like,
Hmm.
but I'm with you. I think honestly, I think they should both be nominated. Like I think the
Yeah,
performances are that good. And so
yes. Well, and again, they bring the perfect balance
right.
where they're both terrifying because she has to do that impossible physicality of being possessed, right?
Right.
So she has multiple possession scenes and that psychosexual stuff, which
Right.
really the film even opens up with that, with
Oh,
her with her moaning,
yeah.
and you're like, wait, are we? This is where we're going? Like right from the beginning,
Right. Like
and
from
then and it just ramps up from there, her entire journey, and so the two of them, Bill Skarsgård with that paced monosyllabic almost,
right.
just that paced guttural, um, but entertaining but also terrifying presentation with Rose Depp and her, like you said, pushing the line over the top and yet still terrifying,
Mhm.
and since like the sincerity and the earnestness of it, and then in between all of those performances are for the most part pretty like theatrical, like
Yeah.
stage play
Right.
performances. Like there is a stage play aspect to this film because it's like they're performing for the back of the audience, like for the
Mhm.
back row. Like the way that Willem Dafoe projects and is eccentric and is all wonderfully entertaining in funny ways. Even Taylor Johnson, the way he smokes a cigar,
Yeah.
and he's beside himself with thought, with rage, and then later grief. um, and I'll just say even Nicholas Holt's Nicholas Holt like is does a perfect performance of being petrified.
Yeah.
Like the fear that washes over his face repeatedly throughout the film is actually quite exquisite. Um, but you have all of these sort of theatrical stage like performances in the
Right.
mix between these polar opposites of the main characters, really,
Mhm.
of Lily Rose Depp's Ellen and then Bill Skarsgård's Nosferatu or Count Orlok.
Yeah, that's really well said, man. Yeah, they're something else. Yeah, Willem Dafoe is playing like I don't even know what he's doing. It works. He's like almost in like a Sherlock Holmes story almost. Like he's the like revealer
Right.
to the audience, but it's doing it in a way that is winning.
And he's really the center of like all the thematics I talked about that we talked
Yeah.
about. Like he's
Yeah,
really the expositional guy for that
that's
because
true.
he's the guy who's the occult expert and the religious thing, and he's asking all those questions. And again, we're
Right.
not getting answers, but he's the
Right.
one provoking us with all of those questions of what we're seeing or what we might be asking in a situation like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. The other stuff I mentioned are more like sort of native to the film's plotting and story, whereas you're talking about like what is actually expositionally said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that's a good point. I what I was gonna say, I lost my train here. You got okay. So yeah,
Oh,
just
sorry.
well, like let's just wrap to just wrap maybe like a couple maybe cons or critiques or a few little things and then we'll just close. Or
Sure.
um I would say, well, first of all, and the only other thing I would say, positively speaking, is that I think this is the best opening 2 minutes in memory. Like you said, it's a cold open
Mm,
that just goes like right there, and it's like
yeah.
I'm in. And then the final closing 5 minutes
Right.
are incredible too. Um, and then the other thing I was going to say is like the to have the film start with Holt and then Depp, Rose Depp becomes the meat character, but I think it actually works because when Holt comes back around, he becomes like the surrogate for the audience. Like he is the tool.
Yes.
Like so, I think that
Yeah.
actually that transition actually works. All right, look. So if I were going to critique this, and I do have some like this film, you can tell he lived inside of this
Yeah.
a lot because emotionality is this film is pretty airtight. It's hard to get inside of it emotionally. I think that is built into the intentionality of it, but I think that could be off-putting for some people. And one other thing, and I'll tee you up, is the you could say he gets a little high on his own supply at times here, I'd say. Because I think The Witch does a lot of this other stuff and it's like 45 minutes shorter. But I
Mm,
don't begrudge the length here because I think he's trying to make epics now. I think he's saying I can
mm.
do this now. The Witch was his first work. So that's what he's doing. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on those quickly?
I think the only, I mean, I totally see what you see, and I think um, the only, I think the only criticisms I could identify, honestly, are in the eyes of the beholder, in the sense of
Mhm.
it's either your vibe or not.
Right.
Because I understand because upon second watch, I just got more immersed in it
Yeah.
than I did the first time, and I was ready for it. But I could identify this sense of like I have to be willing to go there. I have to be willing to go into this foreign of a this foreign contained. Um, yeah, I don't know what it is, but
Con
it's what's that?
atmosphere, context, like whatever it is. It's
Yeah,
its world.
it's a very particular wavelength that you have to be ready and willing to go into,
Right.
and there'll be plenty of audiences that um, just it's just not their vibe, it's not their thing, and that's fine. And but there is something about it for me, like the staging and the stiltedness and the pacing, that it again, just from one watch to the other, it's only improved for me.
Right.
It's only engrossed me more, and that's just because I'm willing to go there. That's the stuff that speaks to me. Um, but again, it's strange, right? That's the word. It's strange, especially nowadays when you look at what's playing in all the other theaters at your
Right.
multiplex. Right? There is nothing else out there that has this particular tone and vibe and wavelength and atmosphere. Even like whatever the best last horror movie was that came out,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's in another world, another genre from whatever this is.
Right.
And so again, it's maybe too niche is the critique.
Yeah. Yeah.
If there's a critique at all, it's too particular,
Yeah.
and that's fair, and that's fair. But for me, it totally works.
Or if it's like, just show me the guy and let him like bite somebody, or like
Right.
whatever. You like and get this thing moving. How long does it take to sign some papers? Like yeah, I get it. If you're there, then you're there. All right, final scores. You got time for final scores, real
Let's do
quick?
it.
Right, buddy. So, FOF rating. You can get wild with it. Do you want me to start or you, my
Go
friend?
for it. Go for it.
Okay, because I think you're going to come over the top rope on this one, but this one started about four. It's slowly grown, so it landed at 4.2 out of 5 stars for me. Very solid, probably around the bottom of my top 10 as of now. Um, and I thought it was a tremendous work that I really liked. I jumped into. I was able to stay on its wavelength even for its long run time, and that's impressive for me. So, but I do see that there are a few things that could hold it back for some people. And there were a couple moments when I wished I could connect with what was happening to Rose Depp because she's such a tragic heroine, and so
Mm.
I wish I could have attached myself a little more. And if I could, I think it might have risen a little bit. But in terms of like craft, performances, everything, it is top notch.
Yeah, that's a fair observation of maybe wanting a little bit more from her character. That's probably the one I could agree with most. For me, my FOF rating for Nosferatu is a 4.8.
Holy crap! What year
4.8, man. That's what I go. And you said bottom of your top 10. I can't imagine this being anywhere but near the top of my top 10. So
Beautiful. I love it. No, that's great, man. That's where I had Wild Robot.
yeah, good. I'm excited that when we unpack that in the
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the in the months to come.
yeah, that's awesome. Well, cool, man. Well, thanks for hopping aboard the ferry to Visburg with me and bringing all our plague-ridden rats and unpacking Nosferatu. This was a gem. I cannot wait to see what happens with Robert Eggers next. I cannot wait to do another pod with Kleiner when the audience calls for it. I expect will be sooner rather than later. So, you wanna send us off, or should I?
I'm not forgetting the line. You have to feed it to me.
All right. It's oh shoot. Oh, I'm Nick Furman. That's what it is.
Yeah, you just say it now. Now
I,
Vic has to edit
yeah,
something.
we'll do it. We'll do it. Take that, Nick. Okay. Um, and for Adam, I'm Nick Furman. This is Furman on Film. Stay firm, my friends.